We have been waiting for a while to review this one in all of its spoiler glory. It's Dune Part 2. It's in theaters right now, and we're going to give you our spoiler-filled thoughts. If you have not yet seen the movie, but you want to watch this review, go see it, and then come back and have a big old discussion with us there in the comments section. But we're going to be getting into all of the details surrounding Dune Part 2. You've been warned. Anything from this point forward, we will be getting into some major spoiler territory. I'm Tim Melton. Joining me in studio is John Lunsford. We make up the Meltdown daily at 2 o'clock Central Time, streaming everywhere. John, this was your most anticipated movie of the year. You've already told us it delivered. Tell us exactly why, and feel free to get into all of the spoiler territory you want to get into.
It delivered from the sense of part one was the world builder that had some action. Part two picks up right where the first one left off. I like how it's not like 5 years in the future, this is what happened. It just jumps right in. It's Timothée Chalamet's journey of trying to earn respect and, his mom too. But, everything about it from the first second, the color and lack thereof. Part of what I love about Blade Runner 2049 from Denis Villeneuve is the color, where he uses it in such a dark city, that futuristic dark look, that the little pops of color are incredible and make it so great. Here, it's the void of color that makes it look so great. When you go to the Harkonnen home planet and it's all black and white, and the fireworks during the day are black, and then the fireworks during the night are white because it's completely inverse. The scenes when Austin Butler is walking, down the bridge, and you can see the basically fireworks going off. It's kind of almost like lightning going off. The way that's shot, every single aspect of how this is shot, and the color sometimes, and the absolute void of color sometimes, just flows perfectly. And all of that continues to build the overall universe instead of just the world of Arrakis, but the universe that you have in this franchise, to then ultimately get to an incredible end. That's one thing we can all agree on, at least it was a dynamite finish to it, to where finally everything comes to a head. You have the final battle from a big picture standpoint of the Fremen attacking, the Royals, and then, of course, the fight between Timothée Chalamet and Austin Butler's character. And, I mean, the acting, Zendaya's acting in it at the end when he's like, I'll always love you, and then she realizes, but he's got to go take the hand of Florence Pugh. I mean, everything about it, every single angle of it, the more I constantly think about it, I can't go higher than 100 out of 100, 5 out of 5, whatever, but I just keep trying to think, how can I add another point to this somehow by how incredible this is?
I said you could get into full spoiler territory, but I didn't want you to give us your final grade right here off the bat, but I had a feeling you were going that way anyway. We'll get into everybody's final grades here.
It's not hard to figure it out when I start talking.
It's not hard to figure out. I think this is a very well-made movie. Do not get me wrong. I think this is an exceptionally well-made movie. I just think this isn't a dish that I would order. I don't like the world of Dune very much. To me, it's too sparse. You remember the characters more for who plays them compared to their actual names of their characters. Is that something that hurts this film? Let's go to Laurel Lunsford, who's with us here, the wife of John Lunsford, for those that are really into Dune and love keeping up with who's connected to who. Laurel is the wife of John. Laurel, this movie has tons of star power, much like the first one. It even added more stars.
More.
Is it that actually something that hurts the experience when it comes to remembering exactly what these character names were or the story themselves?
I do think in a lot of sci-fi movies, the names are kind of hard to remember anyways, but I think having such people that as the character, I think that's just an easier thing. Because even with Avengers and stuff, sometimes you'll say Chris Evans or Chris Hemsworth, Robert Downey Jr., because that's just, we see them all the time. That's how we know them. And I will say, I do think that, and Tim, I wonder if you'll agree with me, I feel like Austin Butler stole the show in the movie. He reminds me of Heath Ledger. If the Oscars had been this year, I think he might have been a front runner for Best Supporting Actor.
With your thumb there, I thought you were going to say he reminds me of Tyler.
That's what I thought you were going to say first.
No.
Actually,
Tyler is Eddie from Stranger Things. No.
Hey, Austin Butler, that's a good comparison.
Yeah.
I'd take that as a compliment.
Tyler's going to pick up his microphone, and we're going to get his thoughts here in a second. But you asked the question of, do I agree that Austin Butler stole the show? And the short answer is no.
Really?
I think Javier Bardem stole the show.
Javier was very good too. I think
He's just in it a lot more than
it's
Austin Butler
because if you look at all the movies that we like, and movies just for the general public, that these big productions, it's always the villain that people like the best. Even looking at Heath Ledger, that's what people remember. Looking at Kylo Ren, Darth Vader, Thanos, that's who everyone likes because everyone loves the villain.
Well, I'll say that Dave Bautista in this movie was made to look like a total punk.
He looked like Bane, like Bane and Tom Hardy's Bane.
They destroyed any momentum he had there. It reminded me of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood when they talk about who ends up getting beat up by who on screen there in the bar with Pacino and everything. And I'm like, Bautista did not get the best end of this deal.
Speaking about going out a bad way, how about Austin Butler and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Oh, that's awesome. Wow.
Full
Mind
circle.
blown. Speaking of that sort of thing that happened to Austin Butler, the Dune popcorn bucket. We have one of those. This thing does not stay together, but Tyler was able to secure a Dune popcorn bucket. We reviewed it on the Meltdown. If you missed that, I can't even fit my hand into it, I don't think. I can't. It's not even happening. I hope the camera's not on me. Is it on me right now?
Oh, it is.
Okay. All right. Let's go to Tyler. Tyler, you loved this movie. Be honest.
Yes, I thought this movie was absolutely perfect, and I'm a full-on Dune fan now. I want to read the books. I'm excited for part 3. I think this is a perfect sci-fi franchise. It's everything that I want in a sci-fi movie.
What did you love about it specifically? Get into any territory you want.
All right, so before the credits even roll, you get the voiceover. It says, power over spice is power over all, and that really carried throughout the whole movie. There was such a focus on the trading and the fight for resources, and how that relates to political control, which is realistic, and I like to see that in a fantasy world where you get the wild sandworms, laser blasters, and all that stuff, but also real-life politics and issues and problems and solutions that humans come up with.
Wow, what a breakdown there. That's some of your best stuff, Tyler. I will ask you, John, is this a movie, in your opinion, where you can stay as surface level as you want or you can go as deep as you want? Does it benefit from that, and will that translate to box office dollars?
I think you can more with this one than the first one, but I think you lose a lot if you want to legitimately get into any aspect of it without having seen the first one. Could you enjoy this potentially? Yeah, there's enough action in it. The fighting and all ramps up a little bit more in this than the first one. In the first one, there's one big invasion, and that's kind of it. Then a one-on-one fight at the end. But this one, I think you could go and just enjoy a popcorn movie a little bit and just stay kind of surface level with it. But because of the world Frank Herbert built back in the day and how many books there are in this series, you want to dive in and study everything about the first book, which the first and second movie does, and say, oh man, I really like this. I want to find out more. And then kind of, whether you read the books or just read the Wikipedia entries, Cliff Notes entry, whatever, to realize the future if you want to. I think because I've done that, kind of get a whole deep dive into those. I'm not going to say what happens in any of them because you'll get mad at me, but like, I
will, because this is a Dune Part 2 spoiler review, not a what's going to happen in future Dunes.
But there's a lot of things in this, and I think the biggest one that we tried to avoid at all costs in giving a non-spoiler review of this was Anya Taylor-Joy appears for a hot second and then disappears. So it's like, well, what's the deal with that? That's a big actress to have in here for literally 5 seconds.
It's already a star-studded young cast, and when you add an Anya Taylor-Joy to it, it's like, wow, this thing is really cooking with star power. Let's talk about the star power a little bit more with Laurel. We've talked about the young stars. I want to talk about Christopher Walken. Did Christopher Walken in this Emperor role work for you?
He's an interesting actor.
The spies.
That's what I was worried about was the voice. I think he did okay with it.
I think he did fine. I think he's another person you look at as Christopher. He's just in so many things, and he does comedy, he does drama, but I think he was good. I mean, I didn't dislike it.
Yeah.
I didn't love it, but I didn't dislike it.
A performance you loved, though, was Florence Pugh playing his
That's
daughter.
my girl, yes. I think and you know, it's weird, or not weird, but crazy if you think about Timothée Chalamet, Austin Butler, Zendaya, Florence Pugh, I'd be willing to bet all of these 4 people will have Oscars in the next 10, 15 years. There's no way that they don't, right?
You're hired as the casting director for Dune Part 3. Who's a young talent you want in this universe? Give me one name that would add a lot
I think
without picking Tom Holland.
I think I never say her name right. What is Lady Bird's name? I don't want to say it wrong.
Saoirse Ronan.
I think she would be really good.
Strong choice.
She's
I'd
got
agree.
the chemistry with Timothée Chalamet and Florence Pugh because they were in Little Women together.
Yeah. All 3 of them were in Little Women.
John, Laurel, myself, we all saw this movie in the same screening. Tyler, you were in a separate screening. Was the audience into it? Did you feel like it was an event movie? Was it packed out? Was there a buzz? Was the lobby full? Were Dune popcorn buckets flying off of the shelves? Tell us about your experience.
Yes, so this was fairly packed. I actually had to go to a later showing than the one I originally planned on seeing because the first showing was completely sold out except for the first 2 rows. So I went to the later showing, and that was still mostly sold out. Everything except the first 4 rows was pretty much taken. And I would say maybe 5 people on my row also had the Dune popcorn bucket. So everyone found love last night.
That was just supposed to be a joke, but a lot of people went home happy regardless of what they thought of the movie. John, what character arc right now is the most interesting to you after 2 movies going into this? Because I have a surprising one, and I want to see if we're on the same page here.
So the character I actually ended up enjoying last night in the movie. You can go with Austin Butler, you can go with the Javier Bardem. They kind of ended up stealing the show, but for me, Josh Brolin. I like Josh Brolin once he reappeared.
He was fantastic.
Because it's one of those people you kind of forget about, is even in the movie. He's one of those that's very easy to think, oh, he got killed when everybody else got killed. Because he kind of plays that, to most people. And he kind of explains, hey, I cut a deal to become a smuggler, and that's how I've been kind of flying under the radar. But then he pops back in, and he is the only, not blood relative, but really the only family member left to then help Paul as Paul is going through his entire journey, which culminates, but is obviously going to keep going. That's who I'm kind of curious to see. How does he help? Because he also had to guide Zendaya too. Chani was losing it the entire movie, and he had to kind of hold her back and say, just let it breathe, let him do what he's going to do, trust him, trust me, trust our family, because they didn't trust the Fremen don't trust anybody. That he's kind of had to be that guiding hand for both Chani and for Paul.
The thing I felt like this movie had more of than in the first one, Laurel, let me know if you agree or disagree, was chemistry between everybody. I felt like everyone was more connected.
And I feel that really is a good, because you can see it when they're on the red carpet, when they're doing interviews. I think that plays a key part in success too, because look at Madam Web, how the cast seems, the 3 girls seem okay, but Dakota Johnson just looks like she's there. And I think that hurt the movie. But I think the chemistry with all of these people has helped the movie.
One person's name we haven't really brought up so far, Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica. To me, that was the arc that was the most interested in, that I was not expecting to be completely wrapped up in. Was it the same for you, Tyler? Did you find that performance and that story arc to be compelling?
Oh yeah, that was an entire side of Dune that I had wanted more out of in the first one, the entire story behind the Bene Gesserit, and we finally get to see that in this, and Lady Jessica really comes into her own and is really intimidating by the end of it.
Really intimidating. I was getting Linda Blair Exorcist vibes during it. I don't know if you felt the same way.
Did she not look like the Tom Cruise mummy? Like how she had, that is immediately what I thought of when I was much better. But,
I try to forget the Tom Cruise mummy.
But am I right?
Yes, with the writing on her face and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this movie is going to be a hit. It already is based on the Thursday night previews. I think this weekend it's going to dominate. We've talked about box office predictions and where things are. I think it may make over $80 million, which is right now where the line sort of is. I could see this getting up to $90 million. John, is this a $1 billion movie worldwide when it's all said and done?
No, it's not, because none of his movies really are. None of Denis Villeneuve's movies are.
But this one's different.
It is, and the lore of Dune has built into the sequel because it's the first Blade Runner, technically a sequel, but it's not his thing. It's Ridley Scott's thing, really. But this is the first sequel he's done to, hey, he's done hit. Now here's a sequel to a hit. That overall, I'd say Dune was a hit just from a critical standpoint and making enough money, even though it did the dual release thing. that will get butts in the seats. But I mean, if it does, 80 to 90, let's say in America and doubles that, is that enough for a $1 billion movie long term when it's at 160 to 180 worldwide the first weekend? I mean, it could creep to that. I don't know how the release honestly is in every country right now. Is it not hit China yet? I mean, I don't know exactly what the release is because I feel like that's a big country that would hit.
It hasn't hit as many global markets as it needs to hit right now. It's only made about $8 million as of this recording worldwide.
That I could see that pushing it forward. Honestly, it's not a slight on this movie, obviously, because I won't shut up about raving about it. But I just think the movie industry is in general, it's just near impossible to do $1 billion movie. Barbie benefited from Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer benefited from Barbie. Oppenheimer got close. I don't know if it's officially passed it yet.
$965 million or something.
I know it was right there, but if we counted that, because eventually it may pass it with re-releases and stuff once it wins Best Picture. But let's count those two. They benefited from each other to ultimately both end up passing $1 billion. Mario has a worldwide appeal to help pass $1 billion. But this year, I mean, if you told me there were no $1 billion movies this year, even with Deadpool, even with Despicable Me 4, which is one that could be it, even with Joker, which made over $1 billion last time, if you told me none of those hit $1 billion, wouldn't shock me, because Marvel's been down, because animated movies, sometimes kids go crazy and sometimes they flop, and it's just kind of a crapshoot now with this, honestly. So I would lean no, it doesn't make $1 billion.
Do I love Dune? As mentioned, no, I do not. This is not a world I want to stay in long term. Will I see the next one? Yes, I will, because this one really stuck the landing. The last 20 to 30 minutes is what I'm looking for, which is conflict being exposed on screen in a very dramatic way. And finally, it felt like 4 hours of plotting finally led to something where there was weight. And that's what I was really excited about walking out with Dune Part 2. However, I'm rooting for this movie. Theaters need it. There has been such a drought. I believe the last $80 million opening we've had was Five Nights at Freddy's. That was a while ago. We need this movie to succeed to preserve the theatrical going experience, which is why you've seen somebody like Christopher Nolan so much behind the marketing of this movie. Denis Villeneuve and Christopher Nolan are BFFs right now, because between them, they're trying to help be the pioneers to save the theatrical attendance, in-person experience. And I respect that, and I appreciate that. Even if this movie is not for me, I hope it is very successful and does reach that $1 billion mark. It will be a tough task, but we're going to get into our final thoughts here. Laurel, what's one more element of this movie that you either really liked or really disliked? What's one more thing about this movie that you can say to people who have experienced themselves that you may be able to connect with right now?
I think if people saw the last one and they're like, oh, this is kind of boring, because that's kind of, I mean, I'll be honest, I thought the last one was a little slow. I think this one has so many different plot points that it keeps you interested. Like, I didn't nod off, where in the last one it was easy to, but there's something, I think, with all the different characters, you'll find something to connect with, like, no matter who you are, because there's so many different things going on in the movie that it's like, oh, maybe I connect with how Zendaya is feeling, or how Timothée Chalamet's character is, all of that. So I think there's something for everyone, which is a good sell for this movie.
Talk a little bit about the Harkonnens, Tyler, and whether or not you thought that they were successfully portrayed as the villains of this film.
So I've got this in my notes as Stellan Skarsgård as Baron Harkonnen as one of the standout performances for me. It was so much like Marlon Brando's performance in Apocalypse Now.
Did you like his death sequence? Did you think that was effective?
Oh, yeah, it worked for me. I was good with it. Austin Butler as Fade Rotha. Amazing performance.
That's why I just say Austin Butler. I don't say the name.
Yeah, let's just stick with Austin Butler.
I get saying Austin Butler instead.
So, yes, Austin Butler as the villain. Very just chilling performance. He was psychopathic, but also just full of rage, but also that he wasn't quite there. It was amazing.
Every one of his knife fights where his opponents actually had a way to defend themselves was very compelling stuff, for sure. John, this is the big moment for you. What is the thing that stands out as being the best aspect of this film? Because you can talk about the look of it, the sound of it, you can talk about the acting performances. What is the thing that rises to the top? The one thing that you think makes this one of, if not the best movie of the past decade?
Cinematography. And I love Roger Deakins and what he has done with a lot of Academy Award nominations and winning some as well. But Greg Fraser that did this one, he did the Batman. He did the first Dune as well. He did Rogue One. He's done Zero Dark 30. He's done a lot of really good movies. And a movie last year that I really liked that I feel like kind of disappeared, it is nominated for an Oscar for visual effects, is The Creator with John David Washington. I love that movie. Kind of falls on some sci-fi, cliches and stuff like that, so it kind of got lost, but it is incredible cinematography there. He is incredible. He's a Denis Villeneuve guy. Like I said, he's done both Dunes now. And I think that's going to be something to continue because I mentioned the colors and everything, but a lot of that has to do with how you frame the desert shots, how you frame where does rocks get in, where does a mountain get in, how do you frame the dunes in Dune. And, all of that just absolutely crushes it. And all of his movies have been that way. It's been different cinematographers, including Roger Deakins, but I think he has done an incredible job finding the right person for the project, and they have absolutely stuck the landing with it.
You've talked about it being a 5 out of 5, 100 out of 100, and A+++. So we already know that rating. Is this the best Denis Villeneuve movie ever made?
I'm probably going to lean Blade Runner 2049 still, only because the vibe of it is just more my speed of that kind of cyberpunk future, kind of. I'm going to lean that's number one right now. I would have said coming in that Dune would not have been one of my top three. It probably would have been Blade Runner, Arrival, Enemy. Now it's going to be Blade Runner, Dune 2, and then Arrival, but it's right there, kind of a 1A, 1B with Blade Runner.
That's high praise. I'm glad it lived up to the high hopes that you had for it, with it being your most anticipated of the year. For me, I'm still not completely on the Dune train here, but I am going to give it not a 5 out of 5. I'm going to give it a 3.9 out of 5. I think from a technical perspective, it's a masterclass. I just don't love the IP. I don't love the source material. I don't love the world. I can't get into it quite yet. Everyone keeps telling me it's Game of Thrones, but instead of dragons, it's worms. And I'm like, but I like dragons way better. And I just, it's like Star Wars. No, if I want Star Wars, I want Star Wars. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, Star Wars ripped off everything. Well, they did a better job of doing that, I think, than Dune did. But I'm giving it a 3.9. Laurel, what's your final score?
I do 4 out of 5. I think it was you're right. It is beautiful. It reminded me of the Batman, like the very orange and Oppenheimer. They both have like the very same look of that orange kind of fluorescent look to it that I think is really beautiful. I thought I love all the actors in it. Like I said, there was a lot more action in this one, so it was more easy to get into. And I am curious to see, because I think that's a good indicator. Like, I want to see what happens next. The last one, I was just kind of like, okay. But this one, I'm like, okay, what's going to happen with, now we have a love triangle going on, which that's going to be a big hit for a lot of people with Florence Pugh and Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya, those three characters. So that's something I'm looking forward to exploring in the next one.
For a second, I thought you were referencing Challengers, which was number one on Lunce's list of the 5 movies that he's looking most forward to.
Let's do the same movie, just those 3.
Tyler, final thoughts here on Dune Part 2. I know you're going to see it again on Sunday. What's your score after one viewing of it?
So, like you said, I've already got my ticket for Sunday night. It's a 5 out of 5, 100 out of 100, whatever you want to call it. It's
Good man, Tyler.
Perfect movie. I've called this the perfect franchise, and I feel like they'd really have to drop the ball for it to not be a perfect franchise for me anymore.
The best thing ever to happen to Dune Part 2 is that people saw Madam Web and they said, oh my gosh, it doesn't get worse than this. And they were in a drought, and Dune Part 2 was the drop of water in which everybody needed the water of life, I call it. That's going to do it for our Dune Part 2 review. Appreciate our entire panel here. I'm going to go ahead and head on home and ride the worm. Thanks to our good friends at MyBookie, our title sponsor. John, there's a lot of different ways to participate on MyBookie.
Go to mybookie.ag, use promo code NEXTROUND, get that first deposit bonus there. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with our friends at MyBookie.
This has been a full spoiler review from the Meltdown crew, presented by MyBookie, broadcasting live from the Culver studio.